Yo dudes, it's Blake from Green Knuckles Across. On this week's Fogo Friday, we're going over how to break in a brand new head. To be more specific, a brand new Nike CEO. Now you can use this video to help you break in other heads besides the CEO, but I do get asked this question a lot, and most of the time it's people asking me how do I break in my CEOs. So that's pretty much the main reason why I'm using a CEO for this video. And the second reason is I just got this head today, and with the season being right around the corner, I gotta break this in as fast as possible. So in this video, I will be showing you guys how I personally break in my CEOs. I'm not gonna say it's the right way to do it because many people have different ways of breaking in their heads, but this is the exact way of how I break in my heads, and it works every time. So without further ado, let's get started. To start, I do have a few different methods on how I break in my heads, but they all depend on how much time I actually have before the game starts, and they also depend on where I'm actually at. So for example, if I have actually 24 hours or more before my first game, I will use my primary method. And then if I just have time for the morning of that game, I'll use my secondary method. And then finally, if I maybe just have a few hours to break in my head, I'll use my third and final method. So my primary method involves boiling the actual head. So I'll start with a big pot, big enough so where I can fit the entire head into the pot. And if I can't fit the entire head into it, I'll make sure I can at least fit the bottom half into it. I will then fill up the large pot with water and then put it on the stove at high heat. And then I simply just wait for the water to boil. So I don't actually put my heads into the pot of water until the water starts to boil. To me, that's just a better way of keeping track of how long the head has been in the pot. So once the water starts to boil, I will then put the head in there for 30 minutes. Once that 30 minutes is up, I will then immediately take the head out of the pot, put it on a shaft, and without stringing it up or anything, I'll just go down to the ground and start taking a few clamps with the head. I usually do around 50 reps once the head is out of the pot, and these reps are super exaggerated to make sure that I have some sort of kink in the head. Personally, I believe that any more than 50 reps is actually a bad thing to do for the head. The head is already in a more softer and flexible state than it's normally in, and too many reps with the head will cause a pretty decent kink to form, and the greater that kink, the less life you have left in that CEO. So if you stick around 50 reps, or just enough so where you form a very, very slight kink, then you should be fine. So this next step is by far the most important step. A lot of people, after they get done boiling their heads, they will just leave it in their room. You have to make sure that the head cools in a warm environment. Don't be putting your head in the refrigerator or the freezer or outside, because the change in temperatures will cause the plastic to become very brittle, which means that the head is more prone to crack. So what I like to do is, since I'm in Florida, I like to keep my heads in the garage where it gets nice and hot in there. I let them sit in there for an hour, and then I'll start stringing them. Now for you guys that are up north, try finding some sort of warm area. Just keep it away from the cold. And that's pretty much it for part one. That's pretty simple. That's if you have more than 24 hours to break in your head. So now here's the second version of part one. Let's say you don't have access to a stove or a pot. Let's say you're at a hotel. And the majority of the time, hotel rooms don't have any stoves in them. But here are a few things that you could possibly use to break in your head at a hotel. The first one is the hot tub. So for the full time that you're in that hot tub, leave the head fully submerged, then take it out, and then do your 50 reps with it. But let's say you don't have access to the hot tub. Either your hotel doesn't have a hot tub, or it's in the winter and the pools are shut down. So your next option would be the bathtub. Do the same exact thing. You don't have to get in the bathtub. You can just fill it up with water, put the head in there, and just let it sit in there for a few minutes, and then you should pull it out and do the 50 reps again. Now with the bathtub, the temperatures aren't gonna get as high as boiling water, so you might have to take the head, put it in there, pull it out, do your 50 reps, and then put it back in there once again. Do the same thing over and over again until you get that nice kink. So that wraps it up for part one. Let's now check out part number two. So let's say your head breaks the night before a game and you won't be able to get a new one until the morning of. Chances are you won't be at your house and you won't have access to a stove or a hot tub or a bathtub. So you pretty much won't have access to hot water. Now I know that I preached before that I don't like to use heat on my head, but in this kind of situation, you kind of have to use anything you can. So for part two, we're going to use strictly heat and no water at all. So let's start out with being at a hotel. Let's say you have access to a hair dryer. You could blast your head with a hair dryer for a few minutes before you have to leave, just somewhere in the lower portion of the head, just to get those walls to kink down just a little bit. So just blast the head with the heat, and then start pulling it forward, start working it, making sure it starts kinking. It won't do that much, but then again, this is part two, and we're very limited on our resources to break in our heads. So just don't expect incredible results. The next option that you can do is to put the head in a few trash bags and then leave it in your trunk. I know in Florida, during our summer season when we play tournaments, it gets super freaking hot out. And so what I noticed is the trunk is usually the hottest part of the car. So if you put the head in a few black trash bags and just leave it in your trunk for a few hours and then pull it out probably 2 hours before your game just to break it in and string it up, then you should be fine. As far as the guys up north, you're better off leaving the head inside the actual car with the heat turned on, and then possibly just holding the head up to the vents and just kinking it again. But let's say you don't even have access to a car. For the guys playing in hotter climates, you can just put the head in the trash bags and just leave them sitting out in the field, let the sun get to it. And as far as the guys up north, just find a heater, maybe an outdoor heater. Best case scenario would be the heaters inside bathrooms, where you go to dry your hands off. And like I said earlier, this step isn't really going to have a huge effect on your head. With that little of time to prepare, anything helps. Which brings me to my final process of breaking in the head, which is part 3. And this is when I have usually 2 hours before a game. So the first thing you do is you make sure you have that head strung up. If you're having to use part 3, you're not worried about breaking in the head super well. You're just trying to make the head flex somewhat like a face-off head. But if you spend too much time on breaking in the head, you're not going to have a lot of time to actually string it up. And you obviously won't be able to use it if it's not strung up. So step 1 would be string it up. Step 2 is by far the most obvious thing I've ever said on camera. Just take face-offs with it. Take as many reps as you can, as many as possible, whatever you have to do. Just make sure that the head has some sort of a kink developing in it. We can all agree that brand new face-off heads, right out of the box, no matter what head it is, are freaking crap for the first X amount of reps. Let's just say that the amount of reps that you need in order to break in the head fully is, I don't know, 300. So if you take 100 reps before the game, you are 200 away from that head being fully broken in. And to me, I'd rather have a head that is a third of the way broken in than not broken in at all. So in short, if you have to use part 3, just string it up and start taking reps with it. And that wraps it up for this week's Fogo Friday. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any more questions on how I break in my heads, or any questions at all, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. And while you're down there, let me know how you break in your heads. I really don't know how else you can break in your head, so I'll be pretty surprised if you have a different way. Like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and if you haven't already, be sure to check us out on Instagram at GreenKnucklesLacrosse. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next week. Till then, kids, get 'em dirty.